Welcome to another episode of Over 40 and Unapologetically Nerdy. Hi, I'm your host, Felicia Baxter. I will be discussing the third episode of Picard. As it is, I wanted to capture my expressions as I watched Star Trek Picard. It just seems this week I am not as energetic as I usually am. I'm still futzing around to show off my new Bajoran militia pendant, which I'm actually very proud of. I'm dragging a little bit and I'm taping or recording a little bit later than I usually do because of very one reason. I had the opportunity to speak at my medical school this past weekend, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. I got to meet some very new students like Tyler and Xavier, and they're all getting ready to go to the match. They're all excited, and I'm hopeful that I wasn't the curmudgeon, the person that discourages them from going into medicine. That was never my intent. I don't want to discourage anyone from anything that has to do with their what they really want to do, and if they're just really nice, because that's who I felt Xavier was actually just a very nice kid. And I was just blown away by how much the university had changed, well, at least my part of the university. My whole world was just one building, evidently. It was called the Communicore. The parking lot where we used to play rollerblade hockey doesn't exist anymore. And the hill that I used to take going full throttle is still there. And I can't imagine me and my big butt going down that hill full throttle, cutting that corner and going into the ER on my rollerblades. That daredevil doesn't exist anymore. But what I was most impressed with was just how although things had changed, some of the things had basically stayed the same. And I wish I had the same access or knew I had the access that I did have during that time, because my first laptop was bought at the University of Florida. I bought my first Mac through a loan through the credit union, which is still in existence, in the basement of the Communicore building. And knowing what I know now, I could have been doing something very similar to this and expanded my whole Star Trek realm of friends and just been more involved, and probably would have been more involved up the hill. And I think it would just been just completely different. But between having to talk about my book, Not My Family, touring the medical school, and then hanging out that night, and then driving back, I am a little bit draggy and exhausted. So one of the things that I did do was, today was just a rainy day, I got me some Bailey's cream mixed with some hot coffee and peanut butter cups. This is probably the richest cocktail I've ever had in my life. We're going to see how this is going to keep me up. But even with this rich cocktail, I still am a bit on the draggy side. So let's get to it with this week's episode of Picard. And it's not Maps and Legends, it's that the beginning of the end. Or to start at the end or the beginning or something like that. So here we go.
Previously on Star Trek Picard.
I want you to reinstate me. I will need a small reconnaissance ship with a minimal crew.
You think you could just waltz back in here and be entrusted with taking men and women into space?
It's obvious nobody is really feeling the love of Mr. Picard.
Far older cabal, the Jat Vache. Admiral Clancy just called. Jean-Luc Picard was trying to persuade her to let him go.
So I'm going to go ahead and speak this up.
I want you to stay on mission.
I've put my best man on it.
What's a link to your Borg?
Well, they're former Borg. And we're not releasing them, we're reclaiming them.
There's really no danger.
I have to go.
Go where? Go how?
You need help, you need protection. Yeah. You need someone who hates you and has nothing to lose.
Rafi, it's Jean-Luc. Please, don't hang up. I need a ship.
There isn't
Good.
anything you could say that I want to hear.
Secret Romulan assassins are operating on Earth.
God damn it.
So basically, Picard cons her by bringing some of his best vino, and then the whole thing behind enticing her to trust him for one more straight up adventure. And that was actually the attack on Mars, where Jean-Luc actually resigned his commission, and she ended up getting actually fired and thrown in jail, it sounds like. So here we go.
They give you a hard time? Let's start with the ships.
Oh, and it's called The End is the Beginning, by the way.
Just as you predicted.
You were ready with the inventories from Beta Antares and Aridani A, which shut them up.
So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward, because it dragged a little bit, I thought, in the beginning.
I laid it all out by using reserve duty officers.
And this was just their conversation that led up to her, to his telling JL, she calls him, telling her that he resigned and going back to his chateau. She pissed. She gets called into the admiral's office, and she ends up losing her commission and gets thrown in jail. And that's why she can't stand him.
It makes no sense. Synths don't just wake up one morning and turn homicidal.
They said it was a fatal code.
So I am going to fast forward to the introduction of Hugh, because Hugh is back. Watch this.
Nameless in his own language.
See? Hugh.
Outstanding.
You taught me that even a few words in the mother tongue can be soothing.
The
even
first
in an
Borg
unconscious state.
with an individuality. How cool is that?
People in the galaxy than the
So he looks kind of toe up. And now he's in charge of the Romulan reclamation.
There's a hazard to be warehoused. Our hosts, the Romulans, have a more expansive vision. They see us as both.
I hate it.
You're different.
So check it out.
Thank you.
The Romulan reclamation is on the last cube that tried to assimilate, or that was successful in assimilating one of the last Romulan ships, or the last group of Romulans.
How much do you know about Ramda before she was assimilated? Have you read her
Ramda
dossier?
was some high-ranking official. Something happened to that Borg cube, and it went
I just
offline,
would have asked to see it.
or it was disconnected
Usually I
from the
find it.
hive.
Ask people for help
And
and have to give it.
It seems as if
In particular with Romulans.
Ramda was the foremost expert on ancient Romulan myth. She wrote books about it.
And this interest of hers links you to her work how?
There is ample evidence for the therapeutic utility of a shared mythical framework.
it seems as if there was some massive dysfunction that caused the ship to go offline, and then the Romulans not only it seems like they're only trying to scavenge their assimilated Romulans, but they're trying. I still haven't quite grasped what they're doing with the technology, because Romulan, their pure state, even though they're treacherous, they hate technology.
I'm truly sorry.
They only use it to basically a means to an end, but they would never agree with the Borg to survive. They would never, they utilize the synthetics to basically stop the true association with the Federation.
There were Romulan Federation.
There's something else at risk. I don't know if it's just the Romulans, though, or the synthetic life, or the Borg, or if the Dominion's going to get ready to come back, because they all want order, they all want dominance. But
that a
let's watch
high-ranking
this.
Starfleet official conspired to allow the attack to go forward, to put an end to the rescue mission, which they opposed.
Ruffy, they had no reason to sabotage their own rescue.
What do you think happens when there's a cover-up? They conceal it.
That's why I need your help. I need your mind, your ability to see things others don't see.
No. No. I will not go
He's
down
not
another
really going to
rabbit hole
convince
with
her,
you,
but
J.L.
she is
No,
going to help
no,
him
no,
up
no,
with
no.
another crazy pilot. Check it out. And this is where I'm going to fast
Get out of
forward
here, please.
again, because there really is not any action until... Okay, this is Rio's. Check this out. He has a big old piece of shrapnel in his shoulder. And this is another hardy EMH that actually removes it. But that's actually going to be the pilot that actually helps Jean-Luc out. Forwarding a little bit further. This is the only, believe it or not, action, the upcoming scene in the Back at the Chateau is the only actual action-filled scene in the whole episode. And there's something about this Romulan, she cracks me up. She's pretty hardcore.
And that's heavy sweetness of the grapes.
And you won't miss it. Any of us. One bit.
Oh, yes, my dear. I will miss you, and Shaban, and number one.
I'm going to miss the dog myself.
Belong.
Number one is really cute. Some type of terrier mix.
Truly felt at home here.
I suppose you always had one eye on the stars.
And this is that Romulan.
Which means false door.
Goes on and on, kind of drags. And then those assassins roll up on him and they get to fight him. And as I said, homegirl can fight. He gonna break a hip. Me out too. Why are there like 15 disruptors stashed all over this house? Really? And if you watch Star Trek Discovery, this scientist is like Tilly from the Star Trek, the Enterprise or the Discovery class starship.
Don't have a stone setting.
I hope they don't have some type of tracker or something on her, because the admiral, that Romulan admiral, actually interrogated her. And hopefully it will track it back to the Romulan reclamation site. Something is shady between that that Starsec security officer and the whole Romulan Empire. I'm not sure what they're trying to prevent.
Her name was O.
Chief of Staff Fleet Security, a Vulcan.
You know her?
No, but I hear that she's very good at her job.
She wanted to know.
And O is
Came to
not
see me.
Vulcan. She's actually Romulan.
Sorry, but I told her. It seemed too important not to.
So, blah, blah,
You know, I'm a
blah.
terrible
They
liar.
interrogate this blockhead
She's not what
Romulan.
you think she is.
Which sister are you? Why did you kill her? Is there another one, Micah?
Which sister are you? The one who dies or the one who lives?
Where is she? Where is the other one?
You'll never find her before we do.
Gestehen!
That was a mosquito, by the way. I was checking out.
I know who you are. You are Sentinel. You are the destroyer.
She's the end of all. She's the destroyer.
Let her go.
She's fine. He's the one that needs to be disciplined. Get him out of here. Get him out. Make sure your own sidearms are fully secured.
And then it goes on, a lot of talk, a lot of talk, a lot of talking. They get on the ship.
Here, hitch a ride on your top secret mission?
Dr. Jurati is the Earth's leading expert on synthetic life.
Didn't even ask me to run any kind of security check. Not even the most basic.
Why do you want to go to Free Cloud?
I'm under no obligation to tell that to any of you. And once we get there, you're on your own.
And then they're on their way to Free Cloud to also find the other
Yes, fine.
foremost authority on synthetic life. Okay, whatever. I don't know. It just seemed that this episode
Engage.
was not all that engaging, and it kind of dragged a little bit. A lot of eye rolling, a lot of innuendo, but it was just, it was alright. I'm only going to give it one blast from the phaser. And maybe next week will be slightly more engaging. Let's see what's up.
Will you bind your sword to my quest?
The idea of going there isn't just a bad idea. It's bizarre.
No one asked for your pity, Picard. Just as no one asked for your help.
One impossible thing at a time.
Where did that come from?
Okay, so Black Romulan Samurai Masters, really, y'all? Really? I don't know about all that, but what I do know is that I'm hopeful that next week they're going to pick this mess up, because I think they owe it to all of us to pick it up. But thank you for joining me for this episode of Over 40 and Unapologetically Nerdy. I'm only going to give this week's episode, one blast from my favor set to max. And thanks, and have fun. And let me know what you think. And if I'm right on point, and if this episode just seemed to drag to you too. Bye, y'all.